This week, we have a technical segment. This is surrounding the recent disclosure from myself and my friends at Eclipsium on framework laptops and analyzing UEFI shells. I'll show you some of the behind the scenes and some code that I have for analyzing UEFI shells and determining if attackers can use them to bypass secure boot. In the security news, your vulnerability scanner could be your weakest link. Scams that almost got me, well, not me, but a couple other people. The state of EDR is not good. You don't need to do that on a phone or Raspberry Pi. Hash cracking and exploits, revisiting the LG WebOS, hardening Docker images, hacking Moxa NPort, shoddy academic research, the original sin of computing. Josh is going to love that one. Bodycam hacking, a new OS for ESP32. The AI bubble is going to burst. Mobile VPNs aren't always the most secure. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. ThreatLocker's zero-trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots, just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. Coming to you from Not Hacker Syndicate Studios, this is Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode 896, being recorded on Wednesday, October 15th, 2025. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Sidorian, joined remotely by Mr. Larry Pesce. Larry, welcome.
Hello, from the Lab of Doom.
The Lab of Doom, yes. It's funny, we have a whole studio, but we're both at home today. It's funny how that works.
Well.
I mean, the studio's a little farther for you than it is for me. It's about 12 minutes from my house.
Yeah, it's
a little
30,
longer. Yeah,
it's about 30, 35, depending.
Yeah. Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Lee, welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here. Happy. What is it? Today is Wednesday.
Today's
15th,
Wednesday,
isn't it?
Today's Wednesday.
Hot damn. Plowing through the month.
That's it. Josh Marpet is here with us. Josh, welcome.
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here.
It's good to have you, my friend. Quick announcement before we dive into it. Don't miss InfoSec World 2025, October 27th to the 29th at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort. Cybersecurity professionals, workshops before and after, and endless networking will happen. Save 25% with the code ISW25-SW at securityweekly.com/ISW 2025. First up, we have a technical segment that I'm, of course, super excited about. This goes along with, it's kind of interesting. I think this disclosure process started in the spring of this year, when my coworker, Mickey Shaktov, came to me and was like, hey, I think there's a thing. And he's like, I think you should handle this thing. And I'm like, really? Me? Like, oh, okay, let's dive into the thing. He's like, because you have lots of framework laptops. And he's like, I think there's some issues with some of the framework UEFI utilities that they have. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So after we dug into it, essentially we found out that at any one given time for certain versions, the utilities that framework was distributing for updating the BIOS contained UEFI shells. So UEFI shell is like it's a shell, but for UEFI, you boot in the thing. It's used for diagnostics and to perform maintenance tasks in UEFI. So typically, it's like a little bootloader that loads this tiny little operating system, if you will. That's a shell that lets you enter commands. And those UEFI shells or UEFI binaries that are that shell were signed to work with Secure Boot for framework laptops. So they were signed by the OEM key. I don't know if it's a platform key or a key exchange key. I forget which one. I think it's a platform key. Signed with the secure boot root of trust for Framework laptops, and also contained functionality, including the memory map command that allows attackers to bypass secure boot. Effectively, you can go into the memory and just zero out where the secure boot flag is enabled. And I believe this form, I have to double check this, but I think this is one of the methods that, from the user perspective, secure boot will appear to be enabled, but when in fact it is disabled. There's a couple of methods that do that. I believe this is one. This method has been highlighted a couple of times. Most notably is a few years ago, Mickey and Jesse, my coworkers, presented at DEF CON one bootloader to load them all. And there's a GitHub repository that talks about some of these techniques. So knowing all of that, I then validated all of the framework utilities that they produce or distribute for their laptops. Now, the reason Framework does this is Framework is targeting, although I think they would like to enter into the enterprise market, the Framework targets people like us. It targets the super nerds that want a super nice laptop that is serviceable, configurable, that doesn't come with an operating system, that leaves it to you to put that operating system on yourself, or it can come with Windows. And I think it's targeted at that more tech enthusiast kind of crowd. And so they fully support Linux on their laptops. Lots of forum threads about various distributions that all run pretty well, actually really well on the Framework laptop. So Framework distributes a BIOS update utility for Linux. And for Linux, what you're going to do is take their BIOS update that they distribute on the website, create a USB thumb drive, and what's going to happen when you boot on that is it's going to dump you into a shell. I think they automatically execute a script. It's basically like a batch file on Windows. It executes commands, and what those commands do is it updates your BIOS, right? So if you're running Linux, you don't have the Windows utilities or Windows software to update your BIOS. On Linux, you create a little bootable thumb drive, you boot up on it, and update. And that's how basically it's a UEFI capsule update, right? That update is signed and contains the updates for your UEFI BIOS. But the utility for doing that contains the memory map command and is signed to work with secure boot. So if I'm an attacker, I can take that UEFI program. I can go to your computer. I can use that to boot your system. I can disable secure boot. I can do that conceivably. I can do that remotely because I can execute it on a shell script and manipulate the boot process. That's a little trickier, but certainly possible, in my opinion. I've not tested that, but there's previous research to show that there's a section in the blog post. So the blog post came out after I did the disclosure process with Framework, who were great, by the way. My only gripe is we don't have a CVE issued for this particular problem, which I really would have liked to have seen. However, that blog post came out yesterday, so after several months of validation. And that's not Framework's fault. They were super responsive. We just, there were some other research projects that kind of got in the way and pushed this timeline around. So the Framework was great. They responded. Framework has issued both workarounds and fixes. So they're actively working on fixing all of the software so that it doesn't contain these dangerous functionality in the shells that are signed. They're working on revocation lists and have also offered guidance that if you need to remediate now, you can actually go remove the Framework certificate and or rebuild. You could also, the other option is you just rebuild the whole root of trust by yourself. So there are ways to get around this. Questions up to this point?
No.
All good. All right. So you'll notice in my blog post that went out that I did some analysis of these UEFI shells. And I did that by vibe coding myself some utilities because I didn't need to just test one UEFI shell. I had 10 or 11 that I needed to validate. And then double that number because I had the previous version that was vulnerable. Then I had the new version they released that was supposed to be fixed, and I had to validate that. And so I went to, I believe I used Claude for this, and I generated some utilities. So let me share my screen. And you could generate, I mean, the code isn't anything earth shattering, but it is pretty neat, and I will share it with you. I think if I cleaned up some of these utilities, I might release them. I got to get permission in order to do that. But so the best way to test for this, and there's actually, well, there's 3 different things that I'm testing for. But the first one that I really wanted to test for was, I was like, I have a UEFI shell, I have Chemu on my system. Chemu has virtualized files that can emulate UEFI. So essentially, you can load an operating system with UEFI support in Chemu. And since I was just loading a shell, I was like, hey, can't I just run this shell in Chemu, give it UEFI, and have it boot up? Like, I don't have to enable secure boot. I mean, I could if I put some more effort into it, but and probably should to test that functionality. But I'm like, I just want to boot this shell and see if any memory manipulation commands exist. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? So off to the LLMs I went, and Claude created like the most complex shell script. Not so much complex, but like very feature rich shell script. I'm like, you don't need to be that fancy. I think I actually told that. I'm like, you need to be, it's fine if you want to be fancy. I mean, it wrote Bash kind of like it writes Python, and did the, I would never take the time to add the coloring stuff in there. Like, that's kind of neat and everything, but it did. And essentially, this is a wrapper for QEMU that when you give it a UEFI bootloader or UEFI shell, it will copy it to a certain directory that contains all the file structures that is needed to boot it, and it will run the Chemu command to execute that. It pops up a window, and through a script, a UEFI shell script, NSH is the extension for that, it simply executes 3 of the memory map commands that could be used to manipulate memory and bypass secure boot. All this is very, very exciting, right? So it automated my job for me of copying the file that I gave it to ESP EFI boot and boot x64.efi. The real magic happens in the function. It created all these functions. I'm like, you didn't need to go crazy creating functions, but it did. And then essentially, this is, if you want to replicate this, right? I mean, that's really what you need right there, is that Chemu command. And all of those things set it up to, obviously they define different parameters for Chemu, including which BIOS to use. So that right there is pointing it at the like standard UEFI code. It's actual like EDK2 compiled UEFI BIOS that when you install the EDK2 OVMF package will put on your system, and depending on your Linux distribution will be in a different spot. So I had to search and dig a little on Manjaro Linux to find it, but that's what you're going to point to as to use for your BIOS. And then you define the file format, and then your output. I went back and forth. So if you just do monitor, you can see that's commented out. It will pop up a window, but there's no scroll bar functionality. So if these commands run and the scroll buffer scrolls off the top, there's no way to scroll, and that's actually not a feature in Chemu to do that. So by doing the -serial, I'm able to also output it to my command prompt and use the scroll in my terminal window to see the results of the commands. And it'll actually still put it up on the monitor too. So you can kind of play around with the different outputs there. And that's pretty much it.
Sorry, Paul. I keep laughing back to the days when I first started. When there were no scroll bars on the.
I know, right? Yeah, older.
On the
Yeah.
terminal windows? Yeah,
On the
yeah. And
terminal
you're like,
windows,
crap,
yeah.
run the thing again,
Yeah.
stop it. You Control C right in the middle so you could get, yeah.
Or Control S and Control Q, start and stop the scrolling.
Oh,
So
God.
it's,
Yeah, we
I'm
didn't know
sorry, I'm old,
I know we
but
didn't always have scroll bars, it's true.
I had to
but
pipe
no,
it
it's
into
cool
less
that
or
you-
more, depending on
yeah.
when, right?
But very cool for the power tip not to use the monitor if you want scroll bar, by the way.
So I've got this here, and I can actually run it. So this is the shell script I was just showing you, and that is so like I created folders for. I'm like, this is code that I believe is vulnerable. This is what I believe is not vulnerable, and this is how I was testing it. And I was like, look, take this. So the framework 13 Intel 11th Gen. I took the Linux update BIOS package, which is a zip file. I unarchived it, right, expanded it out, and then I'm like, I want to boot this UEFI shell. So when I do that, and it's going to press enter. Of course, it put a timer in there. I'm not sure why I was actually going to take that out. And then it runs a little window. So this is my actual UEFI loading. And then you can see it runs those three commands. Now you can see like in this window, I've got no scroll buffer, but that's not a problem. I can just close that and then output it into my terminal. You can see that my script runs the command, and I got back too few arguments. I'm like, well, that's a perfect test. Now I know this UEFI shell contains the command, which could be used. And there's a couple other commands that do similar kind of things, the memmap command and all that kind of stuff. So those memory commands are actually there, right? So, and I can show you the script part too. So this is the script that it runs, right? It's very much like a batch file in Windows, a bat file, I should say, right? Batch file. So testing the command, dmem, and memmap to see if they're there.
So those are the three big commands that you're looking for, right? The
correct.
memory map, the dmem, and the command.
Right. Now,
if any of those, is it a combination or is it any of those if it finds that you've got problems?
I believe any of those. The command is the one 100% I'm confident that it would work.
Right.
I know you can do some manipulation with dmem and memmap potentially as well. And those were listed in my research as similar utilities. But I haven't tested, them extensively. Ideally, what I discovered from research is that to be more secure, it should not include those commands.
Are there any? Did you test any other BIOSes? Does anybody not have them as a matter of course? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I didn't test every UEFI shell out there, but it does, right? It does vary. So this is the larger issue is who else? So what I'm told is that Microsoft will not sign a UEFI shell with a Microsoft CA certificate. They just won't because they don't want a UEFI shell floating out that will pass a secure boot validation on any Windows system.
Yeah.
So what OEMs do is they sign their own shells to have maintenance and update utilities. And so that will only validate on secure boot for framework laptops in this example, right? And so the other test that I created was I wanted a signature test because I'm like, okay, wait, we've got a UEFI shell. It contains memory manipulation commands. I'm like, where is this shell? Is this shell signed to work with a secure boot? And if so, what certificate signs it? And also, if I have a system that's configured with secure boot, is it in the DB? Is it in the allow list for software that would run on my system? So I generated a little shell script for that called signature test, which does two things. It will actually pull the DB from your local system and compare the signature table in your EFI binary to the DB that's on the local system. And what that answers is, if I run this, will it be valid on secure boot on my system, right? But then I list out the signature table inside the binary to say who has signed this, right? And so I was using that just to verify. Let's see, sig test. I don't have this in my command history. So we can go vulnerable, EFI boot, boot 64. And so what this tells me is, I don't have secure boot fully configured on this system, but so wasn't able to pull the DB, but it did list the signatures for that and tells me that it is a key exchange key, the issuer. So these are signed by framework. So if your laptop has the framework root of trust, this is valid. So that was a second test that I vibe coded. Now, the third test is kind of interesting. I was like, I've got this binary. We can reverse engineer binaries in a number of different ways. And I was like, I just need a way. So I was actually prompting the AI. I'm like, look, if I give you a UEFI shell and I were to ask you to reverse engineer it to determine if it had the functionality based on binary analysis, if it had the functionality for the memory map command, like, hey, like, how would you do that? What would you do? And it's like, well, I can do that in Python using the PE file library. And some other Python libraries can actually do some, I would call it light reverse engineering. It's more like a strings search in the binary than it is anything else. And it created this Python script, which, when given an EFI binary, will look for evidence inside of the binary for the memory map command. And so this is kind of an okay test. I need to do some more iteration on this one. Let's see if do I have this in my, yeah. So when I run this command, right, it looks inside the binary. I mean, basically it's running strings against. I mean, Python has a library to pull apart PE files, which is cool. And it uses that. And it says, hey, like, based on all these indicators, like, I found like basically this string in the binary, which looks like the help system for the memory map command. And then it looks for other artifacts in there. And I had to iterate on this. It looks for different artifacts in there. And then it gives you a score. Now, it's kind of not great. Like, a 4 out of 10 scores high. So I need to, like, work on the scale. In the post, I just removed that score. Like, I just want the risk level. So the risk level is high because this is a UEFI application. It has the command parameters. I found 22 of them. And so this binary shows strong evidence of the command capability. So I thought that was kind of neat too, kind of further validation. If I don't want to run it in full emulation, I can just kind of pull apart the binary and look at some artifacts for that. So that was basically it. I did that in a virtual environment, a Python virtual environment too, which I'm a huge fan of doing that for your Python projects. Make everything a Python virtual environment. Yeah. So those are the three things that I did.
Which you almost can't not do with Python 3 anymore. It seems like everything has to be in a virtual environment.
I don't like and I think the Linux distribution developers, right? They don't want you. They want you using virtual environments. They don't want you mucking with the system. I don't want to muck with the system.
Yeah.
Everybody I've talked to that's core developer is like, use a virtual environment because we can control the variables.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, one project needs this version of this library and this project. That was a lot of the problems that I used to have, for forever. 2.7 and 3, that, like, you go to put two different projects on the system and they both need different versions of some Python library, and both cannot exist at the same time. So
tell us how that SANS training prep went.
Yeah. Exactly. That's why we use virtual environments now. So yeah, as much as it is frustrating for me to have to remember I need to do virtual environments, it's actually arguably very helpful.
And what I love about the vibe coding thing is, like, once you're done, you can say, hey, generate me some documentation on that. And it spits out like a full, nicely formatted README that then you can go in and modify, right? Usually I take a pass at it and kind of modify some of the things in there.
Take out all the M dashes and things like that.
That too. So that again, like, you can recreate this on your own. I mean, I do want to release this at some point, but again, you could vibe code it on your own, or I showed you the commands. You could pause the video and grab those commands to recreate this on your own. Questions from the peanut gallery.
I read your blog article the other day. I actually, I told you this earlier, but I used a quote from your article in a proposal I just put together because it was so damn good. And it basically, it talks about how this is not just a firmware problem. This is not just a hardware problem. This is not just a software problem. This is an everybody sit down, we got shit to do problem. This is bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The quote, and it's interesting, this quote caught the eye of my coworker, Mickey, as he's like, I don't like this quote, and I'm going to give you crap about it. And the quote is, and AI helped me come up with this, but I was like, this is very well done. And the quote is, this isn't just a technical problem, it's a supply chain security crisis. They can stop right there, and that's pretty thought-provoking. It says, that requires coordinated action from hardware vendors, software companies, enterprise security teams, and individual users. The time for treating firmware as someone else's problem is over. The most dangerous vulnerabilities often hide in the components we trust most. 1,000%. I thought it wrote that based on what I've written before. So I just don't ask AI to write for me. I give it a context of how I want it to write and writing samples. And Eclipsium's entire website, I prompt that to say, use this as the primary source. So like when I read that, I'm like, I've written similar things like this, saying that same thing, but it put together those thoughts very well.
And I keep thinking, this further reinforces the work not only you're doing on hardware security, but also the work, Josh, you're working on H-bombs.
Yep.
I mean, just there's a commercial for what you're doing.
Well, I mean, it's more than that. It's the S-bomb, H-bomb, F-bomb, what I'm calling the provenance pack. Okay. And then you've got the fact that we've got to operationalize it all to make risk visible to everybody in the value chain. And, quantified along the way just to make the impossibility higher, just because.
I want to point out one last technical kind of thing.
Oh, please.
That let's say you were to have some kind of agent that pulled all the entire contents of your EFI partition, right? As your bootloader lives and that kind of stuff. And then you were to analyze it and go, do I have some malicious software that's acting as bootloader? The problem, if you were to detect this particular condition, is it might be already too late. Like an attacker would have to already obtained a signed shell, put it on the house, EFI partition, boot on it, and conduct the attacks. The way to detect this is to find these UEFI shells. The problem is it's super hard. You have to go to every manufacturer's website for every model laptop or computer that they make, find the utilities, reverse engineer the utilities to discover if there is a UEFI shell. Then you have to analyze that UEFI shell. Going out and finding all that stuff. We've already gotten questions on Reddit. I've actually been responding on a Reddit thread where someone posted my article. And so I was responding, just answering people's questions. And I was like, I personally didn't check every manufacturer's software stack to see if they had a signed UEFI shell. I left that as an exercise for the reader, right? Because you wouldn't necessarily find it on your system, but you don't know if you're vulnerable unless you go out and find the code that has been signed for your system, which is wild.
And that checking every manufacturer's site is not something you're going to do by hand. I mean, you're going to want to dive through the results and analyze them, but
right.
Still,
and manufacturers,
you want something to do that.
They hate it when you're crawling their website to find firmware. Ask me how I know this, right? One of the ways we can make the world, right? One of the ways we make the world a safer place is to look at all the firmware that's out there, download it, and analyze it. But manufacturers are like, no, we don't want you to do that. And I'm like, so like now you got to get really creative as to how we obtain the firmware to do some analysis to make sure that it's trustworthy, right? Josh, this goes back to determining what's trustworthy, what isn't. But the whole point of trust is to validate and verify before you trust it. How are we going to do that if it's kind of like smoke and mirrors? Like, you don't need to worry. Like, we might have a utility, but you can't
So
have
you need information before you trust it, and you need validation and verification after you trust it. So you need what we've been talking about, S-bomb, H-bomb, F-bomb, before you can actually allow it into your environment to show you what's in there. Okay. And that's what like I said, I'm calling the provenance pack. And then after you let it into your environment, you need to verify and validate with ongoing evidence that it's actually trustworthy.
Yep.
Trust but verify.
Trust but verify.
So where I'm going with this is that stepping on your shoulders, Josh, is that you wind up with a consortium of people that care, or companies that care, and in that context, in that whatever definition it is, it's okay to download all their firmware and run through it because they've already partnered with an Eclipsium, and there's a trust relationship. And by the way, it's good for their rep to say, hey, clean bill of health today at 12:30 a.m. or whatever, right? It's going to be continuous. And I think, Josh, you pointed out before, this has to be continuously updated, continuously reportable. But qual rock run, right?
Well,
you got to start
yes.
somewhere.
So we're working on that, but it's a problem. We've got all these bill of materials, so you can you can check before. We do not have continuous compliance and continuous security to verify and validate afterwards. We're working on that. Well, no. I mean, CMMC, CSRMC, DORA in Europe. There's a lot of things that a lot of frameworks are starting to do. How often are you checking, man? And if the answer is less than all the time, nope, you fail.
It's interesting. I'm giving a webinar on S-bombs Thursday, but tomorrow. But what's interesting to me with this particular case of UEFI shells, to wrap this up before we end this segment, but I think that you're on to something, Josh and Lee, when you're talking about the bill of materials, because I'd want OEMs, this is my pipe dream, to go, hey, if I define my a root of trust, right? So let's say framework, HP, Lenovo, it doesn't matter who it is. An OEM goes, hey, I'm going to put a key in here, which is not part of the root of trust. They should have some kind of attestation API that you can query to go, okay, you put a key in there. Okay, what software did you sign with that key? And then all of that software has an S-bomb, and all of that is accessible via attestation, so that I, as the consumer, end user, enterprise, can attest to, hey, I got this equipment. I want to go attest to the root of trust is on here. I want to attest the software is on there, and then I want the S-bomb for that software.
Right, because look, that gives you a centralized registry of everything that key has signed.
Correct.
And if there's something in there that makes you go, what the hell? That key may have been compromised.
Right. Yeah, then we know, hey, once a key is compromised, then I can go into my environment and go, oh, now I know exactly which systems and which software is now compromised and shouldn't be trusted in the root of trust.
Which,
right?
by the way,
this
is
needs
right,
to be
why
open. This needs to be open and transparent. And that's part of the problem. That's why a lot of users now are asking the question of, wait, like maybe I don't have framework. I've got a different laptop, but how do I know what software has been signed to be valid in the root of trust on the laptop I bought from HP, Lenovo, whoever it is? How do I know?
That, what is it? The OA browser forum that is reducing the certificate lifespan?
Yeah.
They're responsible for these things, and they should, because that's the web of trust that they are at the heart of, right?
Right.
Or that they legislate over, I should say. You would think that should be part of this. Look, I'm a big open source fanatic, as are you, man. I get it. But we've got to have some centralized understanding, or at least accounting of what's being used where. And you can then make your own decision based on what you see. But if you don't have a place to look it up, that's a problem.
It's a problem.
So I like your point. I really like that.
All right, let's wrap this segment.
Yeah.
Take a short break. Come back with the security news. And we're back with the stories for this week. News articles, security news, whatever you want to call them. We have stuff that we want to talk about, including your vulnerability scanner being the weakest link. And I think what's interesting about this article is, it talks about credential abuse through scanner access. And I've had this discussion in my career in a pretty heavy way, right? I mean, I was at Tenable, and we had ways to authenticate the systems so that you could evaluate what vulnerabilities were on the target. And a lot of customers were very hesitant, did not want the vulnerability scanner. Whatever vendor, didn't matter. I don't want the vulnerability scanner to have credentials with any kind of privilege, especially high-level privileges, to all of our systems, because that's the weakest link. Now, having said that, I worked for Tenable for quite some time, and we've all followed the news, for the show for 20 years or so, whatever. I've not really heard about attacks that leverage vulnerability scanner credentials. I mean, maybe there have been cases of that, but I have never seen like a trend where it's happening all the time. There might be some one-off cases. In my time at Tenable, was never aware of an incident where that happened with the Tenable product. And again, I keep tabs on the news. Now, I'm not saying that it's not something you shouldn't be concerned about, but it's something that I think there's other ways to gain credentials that attackers use other than trying to leverage some other system. Now, what the vulnerability scanning market did, largely in response to that, was just create an agent, right? Yeah. So I don't have to, have credentials flying around anywhere. I don't have to integrate a credential vault. I don't have to manually generate credentials for my scanner. I just put an agent on the system. And the vendors largely have done a really good job of keeping that ecosystem secure, right? It was secured, encrypted communications between the agent and the back end, and great stuff was happening. So while I appreciate this article for pointing that out, I don't think it's something that is like in the wild being exploited. Certainly something you want to have some solid architecture around. But one point in the article bears discussion. And this is something that I've heard over the years, over and over again, how Linux EDR products are not as robust as their Windows counterparts. I don't know if robust is the right term, but they suck a lot more than the Windows counterparts. That's what I've heard. In Praetorian's article, they say across multiple widely deployed EDR products, none of the credential dumping techniques we described earlier generated alerts in our experiments. Detection rates were effectively zero. This strongly suggests that many Linux EDR solutions are optimized to check compliance boxes. I think Jeff has even talked about this on the show. Like, do you have Linux? Yes. Do you have an EDR running on Linux? Yes. I need to check that box if I want to be compliant. In fact, compliance exercises or mandates that we've had to be compliant with in various roles, I've had to check that box, right? So say rather than to deliver a feature parity with their Windows agents, which tend to be far more mature and capable of detecting common attacker techniques, tactics, and procedures, or tactics, techniques, TTPs. So I think this is a time for vendors to step up on Linux. If you look at the Linux malware that's out there, it's not even it's not complex. It's not. They're taking, for example, things like Tiny Shell and JMagic that trace back those two utilities. You could trace back over 20 years. Well, at least JMagic, I think, was a 1999 FRAC article.
No.
Yeah, and was it earlier this year or last year? JMagic was deployed to Juniper Juno S devices. So this is the state we're at with Linux EDR. And you look at all the techniques, I've been following them, looking at the malware. A lot of it just lives off the land and can be easily detected, but it's still true today that Linux EDR sucks, which is a shame. Now, there are ways to harden Linux. However, it gets super complex fast because every Linux is its own special snowflake. And one hardening technique may work really well on one deployment, but not so well on another deployment. And how well you standardize that defines how well you can harden that environment. So
I did run into one of the interesting problems with EDR and Linux is that because EDR currently really needs to be tightly coupled to the kernel. As you did updates, you would find it wasn't able to bond tightly with the kernel, which definitely affects its performance.
100% agree, Lee. That's a huge problem, right? Like, yeah. I mean, you could say that your Linux hardening capabilities are highly dependent on what kernel you're running, and what kernel you're running changes and can be different across your fleet. And so, and then you run into dependency hell, right? Like your security hardening stuff is dependent on this kernel, but now I can't go to the next kernel to squash any vulnerabilities because my security stack has to keep up, right? And there's lots of different scenarios like that would concern me when running any kind of these protections on Linux.
Right. And the one I remembered, it would downgrade at the lowest. It would get down to user mode operations, which really isn't going to help you a lot. Well, it helps you if you as yourself are executing something bogus, but
right.
So bless their heart for not bailing, right? And you can actually query it. It would tell you how it was doing. So if you're running an enterprise console, you could see where their problems were if you looked. But yeah, it's distressing that in 2025 we have this disparity. I mean, aside from the kernel behavior, and I assumed, by the way, that they had these things. They were tightly bound and operating, at their peak performance before they went and tried them. Not right. They weren't, they hadn't been shot in the head. And in that context, I'm saddened in 2025 they don't work better, because that once you're there, shouldn't be that hard.
Right. I mean, one of the answers is containers, which takes me to my story number 26, which relates to this. That Docker is now making hardened images catalog affordable for small businesses. I don't know if it's free for small businesses, but essentially what Docker is doing is the near zero CVE container image. So let's say you want to deploy some application inside of a container. If you just go into Docker Hub and you start using random container images, those can contain thousands and thousands of vulnerabilities. And so Docker has a paid program that you can download hardened images, but now they also have software bundles affordable for all development teams at startups and SMBs. So they're available through a 30-day free trial. I don't know what it costs outside of that. You have to talk to pricing. Yeah, I'm not sure which pricing tier gives you access to that. But Docker Hub has a Docker business for $24 a month. You get a hardened Docker desktop. I'm not sure if you get access to the hardened images.
That's not bad.
No, Docker Hub is actually pretty good. As you grow really large, you probably outgrow Docker Hub. You can basically have your own repositories, or and that's the other thing too. So also, I should point out that when I read this, ChainGuard was the company that it came to mind, and there's other companies too that offer hardened images. Some of them are pretty affordable. Some of them make some free available. ChainGuard has a free tier. ChainGuard does a really great job at creating zero CVE images that are out there, which is pretty awesome. But you can also create your own. It's not that hard to create Docker images that don't have vulnerabilities. I'm sure that's going to increase. It does increase in complexity as your applications may increase in complexity, and you've got thousands of Docker images, right? But this is something you could do on your own. However, if you're managing a lot of containers, it's kind of nice just to go to like someone like ChainGuard and go, look, just give me a base. Like I need a base Ubuntu or Alpine that doesn't have any vulnerabilities, and I'm going to build on top of that. So, you got to weigh the cost, right? If my development team is spending, 10 or 20 hours a week maintaining hardened Docker images, but for like $100 a month or whatever it costs, I'm just making numbers up, but it's going to probably cost you a lot less to go to a company, ChainGuard or others, to go just give me the hardened image. Now you take your developer time that's spent on hardening images and you put that towards bugs and features in your code. That's why these companies can exist and charge for it.
Well, actually, I'm thinking that if you think about your really small business, you want something that's as much hands off. It can keep
Yes.
itself going,
Right.
and that's where the subscription is great. I realize there's details, and people are saying, "But what?" But I'm just saying, less hands on means less consulting cost to that company, and then you can focus on the real problems. Whereas the Docker image is taking care of itself; it's staying secure. Like I said, a little bit of overstatement there, but definitely because they're caring where every penny goes. I mean, sometimes $24 a month is more than they can swallow, but it's way cheaper than that. What, $100 an hour you're going to charge them or whatever?
And but I can tell you though too, this is how important this is. Speaking from a cybersecurity software company, that when you go for compliance or you're trying to win a contract, one of the things they're going to look at and at least ask you about is how are you hardening your product? And if you're using Docker, do your images contain any CVEs? And they likely will mandate that you have to have as close to 0 CVEs in your containers before they'll buy your product or certify it for any kind of compliance.
And here we are walking in the door with that potentially handled, or we've done a lot to raise the bar in favor of the merchant or the business.
Yep.
Well, you're making it simpler, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I want to use this. Okay, cool. I don't need a consultant, as you said, whatever, hundreds of dollars an hour to fix it. It's pre-fixed.
Yeah.
It's a prefix. It's like a restaurant. It's a prefix. It's
a prefix menu, but it's also maintained, right? Because you create a container that has 0 CVEs today. Tomorrow, now you're running it and you've got 20 CVEs. You're like, oh crap, I need to update the base image, right?
Right. So, and even if you're a supplier, a vendor, or a provider, service provider, the lower the overhead is for keeping it secure to whatever standard, the better for you. Because it's not just the cost to your clients, but also the resources you got to expend keeping it there are reduced. I mean, that's a win too. I mean, come on.
I want to talk a little bit more about EDR.
This is cool.
Before we go, so there's 2 things on EDR. So there's a new EDR bypass, and I say new. Sometimes these are not new, and sometimes these are variations on another theme. Sometimes someone did research, people are using that technique. It's not widely publicized. Someone else does research and widely publicizes it. And I'm like, oh, it's new. And then, my pen tester friends that are deep in the weeds of EDR bypasses are like, not necessarily new. So I'm just putting a huge caveat out there that when we talk about EDR or anti-malware, antivirus bypasses, this could be a technique that has been well known and we're just not aware of it. So if we do mention one and you're like, oh, that's been reach out to us, let us know if the history behind it, because there's a new one of these almost every week. And so that's just an observation that I think is really super important. So EDR freeze leverages Windows internals, specifically the mini dump write dump function and WER fault secure.exe temporarily suspend the EDR process or antivirus program. It's achieved without using third-party vulnerable drivers, although that's still a valid attack vector, but by exploiting built-in Windows debugging mechanisms. So it uses the mini dump write dump function to take memory snapshots for debugging, which automatically suspends all threads of a target process during operation. So it's like a debugging thing. And then there's a Windows tool that can be run with Protected Process Lite, allowing access to processes normally protected from tampering, including EDR. So the careful synchronization of those allows attackers to put security processes into a prolonged dormant state via a race condition. It's my story number 21. I thought that was pretty cool. I've seen techniques kind of similar to this, where attackers are able to kind of pause the EDR or put it in a state where it's effectively asleep. There has been a variation on this theme. This combination I've not seen before, but doesn't mean someone. I venture to guess someone might have found it before this. Maybe not, but EDR bypass, man. There's like new ones every week. It's crazy. The other one was Microsoft, SentinelOne, and Palo Alto networks have withdrawn from the MITRE attack evaluations. Did you guys talk about this
What?
story on a previous show or not?
No.
No. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. And so they've all issued statements that they're going to do their own evaluations or some other kind of evaluation. Haven't really given great reasons why. So Microsoft announced that after extensive deliberation, it decided to forego this year's evaluation to focus all of our resources on the Secure Future initiative and on delivering product innovation to our customers. Like what? Like Microsoft doesn't have the resources to participate in the MITRE attack evaluations. It's kind of like the excuse. Like, we need to focus on other things. We can't be sidetracked, even though we employ the most engineers out of any other company in the world. We can't be sidetracked with this MITRE attack evaluation. Sentinel-1 decision came after a thorough review internally and was made to prioritize our product and engineering resources on customer-focused initiatives while accelerating our platform roadmap. Now, I do want to speak from experience and say, when your product is evaluated by a third-party company, it is work. It is a lot of work. I remember being at Tenable and helping with or in doing some of that work. It is a lift. Is a lot of babysitting. There's a lot of process. You have to issue a license for that company. You have to, do the hand holding. You have to help them with potentially with configuration and setup, answer questions. So there is work associated with it, but in the grand scheme of things, for these large companies, it's not a lot of work.
Do you think there's any connection back to, remember, what was it, about a month ago when there was stuff about CISA and funding of MITRE's work, and they said they would extend it for a year, but that whole up in the air, whether that was, did they just get nervous about it continuing to be there?
CISA was funded. MITRE just went through their 4th round of RIFs. I know a friend of mine just lost their job trying to find her work. MSISAC and CIS got defunded.
Yep.
And 200 people at CISA just got transferred cross country. And if they don't move, they get fired.
Delightful. I mean, no matter what the reasons, that still kind of blows. It's disruptive at the minimum. At
best. So funding now is a I have no freaking clue moment.
So I'm just wondering if all that, do these guys want to pull back from MITRE because they want to be relying on somebody else's house of cards.
I wonder if I wonder if they've lost faith in MITRE due to all of the funding things that have happened. And they don't want their products evaluated by a team that might not have the appropriate resources to conduct the evaluation. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that might be the opinion of Microsoft, Sentinel-1, Palo Alto.
That is a very nice way to put it, Paul, and that's actually what I'm getting at.
Yeah. It could also be that in the latest round of evaluations, MITRE's like, hey, we don't have as many resources. Therefore, when we do these evaluations, the vendors have to do even more work to support the evaluation, because all 3 vendors kind of mentioned that they want to focus resources in other areas. And I don't know if that's hand waving or could be the result of, hey, to participate in this is going to be a lot more work, and we'd rather take that work and put it towards improving our product rather than trying to participate in this evaluation. It's crazy though.
It is. I mean, the nice thing about MITRE is all decentralized, and they were, but I guess it doesn't mean that Sentinel-1 and Microsoft are going to stop doing the work. It just won't be centralized.
They also say that all 3 companies reaffirm their commitment to independent third-party testing through other avenues. So they're not saying we're not going to have any independent testing.
Yeah.
They're just saying we're not going to use MITRE for that independent testing.
Yeah.
So I think it's a Star Wars reference, a vote of no confidence.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. And I'm hoping that MITRE is going out to these guys and saying, hey, wait a minute. What can we do to get you back?
Right.
So even if they lose, I hope they reach out.
Yep. I had a couple of quick things that I just want to make sure I got to, because I've had these in here for a couple of weeks now and I haven't gotten to them. There's 2 GitHub repositories that I just think are super neat that I've flagged for to look at later. and I want our listeners to, maybe a listener, has some more time to do this. One's really easy. You're just going to clone. Like, I like exploits. You like exploits. We should totally hang out, right?
Totally.
And so, 0 day today. So the website was 0day.today, and it contained a whole bunch of exploits. So the repository reads, 0 day today was a long-running public repository of exploits and shellcode. It hosted tens of thousands of proof of concepts for vulnerabilities affecting a wide range of platforms. In early 2025, 0 day today went offline. The pause. That's why I noticed in my feeds it wasn't updating. So that explains it. Months later, it came back, but is missing all of its data, effectively erasing over a decade of exploit documentation from the internet. Due to the site's use of anti-bot protection, much of its content was never cached by the Internet Archive, making recovery difficult. Now, they don't say how they were able to recover the archive, but the link in the show notes is, this looks like it's Vulncheck, which adds a lot of validity to the story. It's Vulncheck, the company Vulncheck, which adds a lot of credibility, and produced an archive 3 months ago, and you can go clone that. So make sure you go clone that in case it goes away. Right? This is always what I do when I find a GitHub. I'm like, hey, there's some good stuff on this GitHub. Got to clone it. Got to back it up. And so there is a complete repository. I've cloned it. Everyone else should clone it as well, so we all have multiple copies. So that if all of us ever need access to the 0 day today exploit archives, we have it.
Yes.
And I mean, why not? I mean, why wouldn't you? Why would you not want a whole bunch of exploits? I mean, you never know when you might need an exploit for something, and now you can have them. The other one was called Kraken hashes, which my comment was, I just found a use for a bunch of old computers, right? So Kraken hashes is a distributed password cracking system designed for security professionals and red teams. It coordinates GPU and CPU resources across multiple agents to perform high-speed hash cracking tools like Hashcat through a secure web interface. It's a full management system for hashes during, after, and before. Ideally, while also checking hashes for known cracks, we update a pot file with every hash that can be used as a first run against other types of hashes for a potential quick win. That's interesting. It says something to test out and increase your power bill.
Yep. Yeah. Kraken's been around for a while.
And this is like is this a variation on another project? There have been a couple of projects that have done this, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think about my time at Guardians not that long ago. We were using Kraken to do distributed password cracking, to be able to split GPUs across multiple systems to do power management and all of those types of things. Yeah, you can't put 32 GPUs in one motherboard, so you'd have multiple systems.
Wait. That sounds like a challenge.
I mean, it is, but
so is this a variation on Kraken? Did they fork an original repository that maybe wasn't being maintained?
Maybe
this one's actively maintained. I thought I read something about this.
Maybe.
I think this is a continuation on a theme. Yeah, so this is nothing new, is what you're saying, Larry. But this is this project is being actively worked on and supported. Whereas maybe some of the older ones or projects that were not supported, and this person was like, you know what, let's make one that is fully supported and being actively worked on.
Nice. Great. I love it.
Right. Yeah. So that was like my This Week in GitHub. We got to go to the one for Josh. Did you watch this video?
No, I
from
didn't.
Laurie Wired? Oh, that was your homework, Josh. You didn't do your homework.
A little busy.
What?
Make sure my story number 29. I mean, I believe she made this video just for you. I mean, she doesn't say that in the video, but she made this video just for you. And she talks about the history behind Ken Thompson's famous paper and the concept of the compiler that compiles the compiler that puts the backdoor inside of it. And I want to say was the paper released as part of his acceptance speech for the ACM award that he won? I think
so. Yes.
Yeah. She says that in the video. Does a great job of explaining the history, how it works, why it works. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's highly educational. She did a fantastic job, and she does some hands-on exercises in creating her own Quine or self-reproducing code, which was part of the paper, right? Kind of references what if code can reproduce itself. And so she goes and exercise and she has a GitHub with her code in it, and walks through the video. It's just a really, really well done. I subscribe to the channel. Very,
Wow,
very cool
that
work.
good?
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay.
Yep.
I will.
Nice.
I'm going to put myself on mute for a minute.
You see, you go skim through it because it's friggin' awesome.
Nice.
She has a nice studio background too. It's actually what I suggest to people to use their studio backgrounds. They just get some bookcases and put some stuff on the bookcase, put some lighting, and you're done. Very simple. Just really nice lighting though.
Oh, dude, she's so funny. Compiler begets compiler. Oh my God, this is awesome.
She's like, it's so philosophical. Like, she has a very deep understanding. I mean, because it's funny and entertaining, but she has very much a command of the subject matter, which it adds the educational component, right? Yeah, it's so
Awesome.
great. Yeah, it's good
It's
stuff.
awesome.
Yeah,
I like how she calls it
also-
the original sin of computing. I had not heard that reference before. That's a very good reference.
Yeah, well, and also I like how she talked about back when you had, before you had the compilers to do it, how you had to translate it all back into the machine code.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Although she mentions, setting the ones and zeros, it wasn't quite that bad. I believe was operating in
Like the
Okay.
human was the compiler.
Yeah.
You had to take
we
your
just had to do
assembly code and you had to manually. You were effectively the compiler.
It's interesting. I
crazy
love some of the
to think.
comments.
Done that. Don't want to do it again.
To understand recursion, you must first understand recursion.
Mm-hmm.
And wait. Oh, this one's great. I thought it works on my machine was the original sin of computing.
Yeah.
And that's why Docker was invented. Well, because we have to ship your machine. Okay.
Right. It's fine. I'll just virtualize
Yeah.
my machine. It's fine.
Oh, this is for you, Paul. You can't trust code that you didn't totally create yourself. What a legend. I can't even trust the code I did write myself.
So awesome. Yeah.
Oh, I love these comments. They're great.
Everyone should go watch the video, read the comments. Larry, you had an update on the LG WebOS TV.
Yeah, and it's a super quick one because I went and looked at this, and it's a little bit of here's what grinds my gears kind of session here, because in the advisory from SSD Disclosure, they've got some instructions on how to create the Docker image and then start your shell and then run your code, and they've got the code below it. But if you notice in the code, the first script from their page says, "Oh yeah, from the Docker file, you run some updates, you install Nginx, and then you copy an IPK to the Nginx directory and install the application dependencies." Where are they?
The package and dependencies.
The packages and
Right.
dependencies don't exist. So the script fails because it can't copy source and dub. So you create those directories, and of course now they're empty. So
Right.
you try to do this, and as you're moving on, it can't actually do anything because it doesn't have the IPK needed, and or any of the dependencies. So it doesn't actually work. So it's kind of like no GitHub
wait.
repository. The only place that I've found that they put this stuff is on this page, and even the link to the LG security advisory links back to this article with the same stuff. So, and part of the reason why I found this out is because I wanted to do it because I have an LG WebOS TV at home, and disrupted the family by plugging USB into the back of this thing and have to move the TV on.
So you went through the whole exercise. So you tried to replicate this, and the missing piece was some Android packages.
Apparently, some Android packages and dependencies.
Interesting. There are repositories where you can download Android packages that people have archived that will run on various versions of Android. I know this because I have an audio device, like we would call it an MP3 player, but it's like one of the really high end ones.
Yep.
I forget who. It's not Anchor, but it's right here, and it just runs Android. It's like this little player right here. It's just like a really high end audio player. Futura. I forget who made. I can never remember the company name. But it just runs Android, and you can put Spotify on it. And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of neat." But I'm like, "Where do you get the Spotify package from?" And then like I was digging around on the forums, and like, "Oh, you go to this website." There's a couple of different websites actually that archive all the Android packages, and they're like, "You want to find the Spotify for this version because that matches the Android version that's on there, and when you install that, it works just fine." And it did work. So I assume, Larry, for this project, you may have to contact the developers of the exploit and ask them, like, hey, like, which Android packages were you installing them? Like, you don't have to send them to me. Like, I'll go find them. But yeah, I don't know if they gave you enough information to find that or not.
I think they did, but I'm not sure. Because as I'm, spending some more time as we're talking about this on the code, their Python script to do the exploit has a reference to an app called com.reverseshell.myapp 0.0.1 all.ipk.
I'd start there.
Yep. But the big question is this something that is readily available?
Larry, that would be telling.
Right.
I mean, I was just thinking. I was wondering if what they did is to prevent this from being a basically plug and play exploit script, that they redacted some of the information.
Yeah.
But
they redacted the where you download com.reverseshell myapp all IPK.
Yep. And this is awesome. Because I don't know if you remember the whole internet deal that you could do, and it was a twoosh? It's not a swoosh, but a twoosh when you search for a term on Google and you get a total of one result.
And it goes to this article.
Yeah. So if you search for com.reverseshell.myapp as string, yep, one article. We found, in this day and age, we found a twoosh. Yep.
Interesting.
So that said, I bet, now that I'm thinking about it, I bet we could replace this with some Android reverse shell IPK that works on WebOS. Just a matter of finding our own, but still bogus.
Like, it doesn't really matter, though. You're not doing anything. Never mind. You're not doing anything destructive.
No. I mean, the point that I'm really trying to get at here is great vulnerability disclosure. You didn't include all of the steps to be able to recreate it, and I kind of get that. And we've said it before on the show. Hey, maybe you don't want to include all the steps to keep script kiddies from doing it. You've actually got to put a little work in,
right?
But also at the same, on the converse, you want to be able to test your versions because they only listed one version here to be able to support testing other versions because they clearly only had one TV to test this on. Maybe to help support, understand what the support for other versions on, being able to have access to all of that makes sense. So it's one of those double-edged swords, right? And I don't know if I know where I stand on it. So,
Larry, one of your other stories was interesting too. Tactility, an operating system for ESP32.
Yeah.
I happen to be running that right here.
Nice.
Oh, do you? How do you like it?
What's one of the T-decks,
there's
right?
there's no apps for it. You can go into the apps. So they've got calculator, chat, GPIO, but there's not much else on it. And I spent a little bit of time.
So it's a Palm Pilot?
Yeah. Basically.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. I mean, it runs and stuff, but I guess you have to make your own apps. I'm not sure where all the apps are for it, or if people just aren't yet developing apps for it. But it is an OS that runs, which is pretty cool. I've got it on my T deck, one of my T decks. This is just the T deck without the case on it. But it runs on the T deck. That's the hardware they recommend for it. So, I do have it running here. It's pretty cool. I just, got to figure out if there are more apps, where to find them. And if not, how easy or difficult is it to develop your own apps? Maybe to provide some hacking functionality. Like, it'd be kind of cool to make an app for it that just lists out all your Bluetooth low energy devices. That would be, in my opinion, a pretty simple app to write, right, Larry?
Yep.
You can probably have code examples, use some AI, and just like a basic task to get you started. I think the concept of it is cool to have like almost like a Linux-like operating system that goes on your ESP32 devices.
Yep.
So I dig it. Like I said, installing it wasn't too bad. I'm just at the point where I'm like, okay, now what do I do with it? How do I get better apps?
Yeah.
To do hacking stuff.
Arguably very alpha, very early, but throwing that out there for folks that like, this is a good opportunity for us to see some more adoption of these types of things in all of our.
You want to write some apps for it? Please do, and let us know if you do. I'll test them out.
Totally.
Interesting stuff, but I'd love to. I've been looking at the story list. Sam, I know he isn't here right now.
He's
but
not here.
I would love to smack some of his stories around.
Like what?
The AI bubble. He went crazy on AI this time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I read number 2 is AI data centers are an even bigger disaster than previously thought. Holy God. There are I didn't know this, but there are apparently hundreds of new AI data centers supposed to finish in 2026, like be built, be loaded with machines and be up and running. Okay, cool. And one of the big investment gurus said, all right, so 10-year depreciation. No, apparently it's a 3-year depreciation. Well, I'm like, yeah, because that's the hardware cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Praetorian Capital, Kupperman's, the head of Praetorian Capital, Kupperman, Cuppy Kupperman, he said, look, if you do a 10-year depreciation, and somebody went, oh, no, it's like 3 to 5 years. And he went, that's impossible. What do you mean it's impossible? It would require $1 trillion in revenue to make those data centers profitable. He said there's no way they're getting
across all those companies, right?
Yeah, across all those companies.
Yep.
$1 trillion in revenue a year. Okay. And
that's probably not, is what he's saying, that's not feasible.
It's not feasible.
The prediction is they're not going to be able to generate that much revenue.
Yeah, it's not $1 trillion industry.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, that would just be break even. Many trillions more to earn an acceptable return on this spend. So what he said was, if the economics don't work, and they don't, I love this quote, doing it at massive scale doesn't make the economics work any better. It just takes an industry crisis and makes it into a national economic crisis. So on a personal level, all right, I want a data center in my house. Just I'll wheel a rack of that stuff out of the data center and put it in my house, and I'm good. My electricity bill won't. But
that's the problem.
This is going to be insane on an economic level, because I live about 40 minutes away from Wilmington, Delaware, and they want to put up an AI data center in Wilmington, Delaware. And they're talking about all the money it's going to bring in. And the problem is it's going to raise everybody's electric rates for the next 10 years or so by
and they can't use
double.
Solar doesn't generate enough to run those data centers.
Oh, it does.
So
you need really big solar farms.
You need really big solar farms. You start running out of room, basically. Like, you're going to put your data center somewhere next to 100 acres farmland where you can put solar panels on.
Mm-hmm. And then you're taking away you're taking away the farmland, and then the communities complain because you've got ugly eyesores of solar farms.
The windmills are the same way. Windmills and solar farms, people hate them for that aesthetic reason.
Yeah. What we really need. Go ahead, Lee.
I see the other issue with both of those technologies is the lack of storage. They just produce instantaneous power. You have to, where are you going to put your battery banks to store it? We could put some floating platforms on the North Atlantic and be able to walk to Europe, but it's going to be big.
Yep.
Not that people aren't working that, but
there is the molten sodium towers. Mm-hmm. They literally take solar and focus, instead of photovoltaic, it's mirrors. They focus it on a central point, which is a big tower filled with salt. Mm-hmm. Not joking. Mm-hmm. And it's so hot it melts the salt, And so they flow the molten salt down into a storage tank, and the heat is stored. And then they use the heat to create steam and generate power,
Yeah.
even when the sun isn't out.
Kind of
Obviously,
like
that's
like a nuclear reactor without nuclear physics.
exactly.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
almost exactly correct. But
Right.
it's so there is some storage depending on how you're doing it, but those are big installations. Somebody said we could stick, about 100,000 acres of solar panels and molten salt systems in like the Mojave Desert, and we'd solve the energy crisis for the entire country.
Really?
But
Interesting.
oh yeah, it would be a dot in the Mojave. You could see it from space, but it would
Yeah,
be just a dot
right.
in any of our deserts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And but right now you have to do it fairly locally because of power grid issues and things like that. But the problem is that you're going to destroy the neighborhoods because you're going to double everybody's electrical bill while the electrical generation companies figures out how to add 2 megawatts to their
Right.
local generation capacity. Oh, now would be good.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Yep.
And then you've got to, like you said, you've got to make enough money because otherwise 5 years from now, those things are now rotting buildings full of computers.
So, but it
Mhm.
sounds like we'll be limited on the innovation side of AI due to power and funding constraints.
Well, is there a cap? AI is an assistant, and I love using AI as an assistant, and and you do too, Paul. But the problem is AI going to replace as many people as they think it will?
Some think, I heard someone say that AI was going to replace 96% of the jobs out there, including like plumbers and electricians. I'm like, how does that work exactly?
You're replacing the skilled worker with somebody who can just listen to the prompt.
Yeah, maybe.
That doesn't. Ooh.
Well, here's the thing: for some jobs that are heavily scripted, AI can absolutely replace them. Okay, think tier 1 help desk. They write tickets, they read scripts. Here's the thing: I know and you know that is not all they do. I know that because that's where I started in this career. Okay,
So did I.
35 years ago, and I know 700 years ago for you when you're using stone tablets and stuff. But anyway,
I think
come on. You just keep the chips out of the way. It's fine.
Not replaced, but enhanced by AI.
That I agree with.
Yeah.
And I think that you can definitely reduce your head count by using AI because you can make them more efficient.
Right.
But, now we've got another problem. Goldman has, they have a new word or a new phrase for what we're going through right now, which is jobless growth. We're still growing as an economy, but we're not increasingly creating jobs to do it, which is why everybody says, oh, I can't find a job. I know people that have effectively forcibly retired because they just can't find work.
Well, at the other end of the spectrum, right? We've all been working to help make get people smarter, getting into our career, and they come out of college with a brand new degree in their hand and all this training and stuff, and they find that the entry level job needs 5 to 7 years of experience.
Yep, entry level has been
AI has
redefined.
replaced all those entry level people.
One industry that I think will be heavily impacted by AI in working in cybersecurity and technology, this intersects with us, is web designers and graphics designers.
Oh yeah, huge. Between Sora,
will they go away completely? Maybe not, but will they be greatly reduced? Because now, like, people come to me like, "Hey, like, do you know a web designer?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like you go to, I don't know what, Canva or Gamma, like any one of the AI systems, they can generate web content, images, and the whole site for you. Now, is it going to be the same level of customization as a web designer? No, but most people don't need that, right?
Yep.
So
because then you know what you do. You can, in many cases, you can take that output and send it to another AI, and have that other AI customize it for you. I mean, I've did just that. We, for some training classes for work for one of our customers, we had a whole bunch of content. We had an outline. And I told one AI to go generate me all the bullet points and all the presenter notes, and then sent it to Gamma and had Gamma create all the slides. And we had one.
Yeah, but I will say on the other end of the spectrum, we're running B-Sides Delaware November 14th and 15th. So we called up One Dark One, and who was an amazing graphic artist. And we sat down and talked with her for, I don't know, an hour or two. And she came up with some sketches that were so far out of what we would have ever told an AI to do.
Sure.
Okay. And she came up with And then we said, oh, we really like this. And she goes, okay, explain that to me. And we explained, like, the end result, the logo for B-Sides Delaware this year is out of this freaking world.
I
Out of this
agree.
world.
Humans produce way better content in this context than
Yes.
AI
Yeah.
today. I don't know how much. I don't know how close it'll get.
But it cost us money. That's the other
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Canva is $20. I will tell you that One Dark One was more than that.
Yeah.
Worth every penny. She's
Mhm.
amazing. Okay.
I will also argue
Use
Canva.
her. Any other conference, use her.
I also argue Canva can get more expensive depending on how much content you're asking it to push out.
Well, that's what's going to
And how
happen
mu-
as we
and-
talk
and
about
how
the
many
cost,
iterations.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
like Claude, to me, Anthropic makes a much better AI system, but it's also token based, and you can run on a token. And if you want to keep giving them money, they'll happily take your money.
Yep. Ask me
for
how.
more.
Ask me how I know this.
Yep, I've
Yep.
been on a project with Claude, and I used up all my tokens, and I have like the pro plan or whatever.
Yep. You got the $200 a month plan.
No, I have the next one down from that.
Oh,
Yeah.
amateur.
Amateur, I know, it's amateur hour.
Amateur.
ChatGPT is similar model too,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
But Perplexity it doesn't produce the same quality for me now that some of the ones that want to charge more, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Well, there are AIs that, instead of being a simple reasoning model, are tuned to be
Mhm.
specifically data analysis or
Right.
writing or research. They're getting much more tuned. The concept that I can see is that we're going to see AIs that are, you're not going to use one AI for everything. You're going to use one AI for your assistant,
Right.
your one AI for your writing, one AI for your video editing, one AI for your, they're going to be they're specialist AIs effectively.
Yes, agreed.
But I still think the point is that as AI gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the expectation of a lot of people is that it is pixie dust. You sprinkle it over something and all of a sudden it's amazing. And AI isn't pixie dust, it's quicksand.
Mhm.
You know, it will drag you down in the details if you're not actually competent and careful.
It kind of relates to shoddy academic research, and I wonder if AI was used to create some of this research now. But Richard Balick made a post that I thought was really interesting, right? And it's a quick overview. He says, when someone cites one of my works, I get a notice on ResearchGate. And today I got one from an article from the IEEE Open Journal of the Communication Society, and it cited his first book that's now 21 years old.
Oh, God.
The Tao of Network Security Monitoring Beyond Intrusion Detection.
Wow.
Published in July of 2004.
I have
This
that book.
Academic paper titled A Survey on the Security and Privacy of Industry 4.0 and Beyond, Technical Aspects, Use Cases, Challenges, and Research Directions was published recently. They make a reference to Prelude, which is a project he talked about in his first book. Now, the project has been dead for years. You visit the link for Prelude in the paper, and it redirects them to a gambling site.
Oh.
If you go to the original Prelude IDS site, it's disguised as a gambling site. So someone let the domain lapse. The domain had a certain, validity to it, and they used that to create a gambling website. Arca.org didn't even Arca was not serving useful content in the time frame the researchers claimed. So Internet Archive was 404. It's frustrating because then it calls into question the entire research paper and the validity of the paper. Research papers, though, should undergo a peer review before they are published. Now, what insiders have told me about this process is that PhDs review each other's papers and in other papers from, graduate students and the like, right? And oftentimes the folks, PhDs who are peer reviewing the paper will kind of just skim it and be like, yeah, that sounds good, because they've got 12 papers that they have to do a peer review on. And they're like, well, if I need a peer review on a paper, I got to send it back to this person too. So I don't want to not peer review papers because no one's going to peer review my paper. Could be how it works. But they don't actually read the paper and check all the references. It's just a rubber stamping process. And I think that's the reason behind the shoddy academic research that Richard's calling out, which just needs to stop. We need to be able to, back to trust, right? We need to be able to trust the research that's coming out, which implies there should be a verification process, which is obviously lacking. Because this should have been fleshed out in a peer review, in my opinion. You're referencing something that old. Peer review should have been like, WTF? What are you doing? You got to find a better reference here.
Yeah. If whoever reviewed it even looked at the reference.
If it was even reviewed, who knows, right?
Yeah. 2 ifs.
Yep.
What else we got?
So you don't need a phone or a Raspberry Pi. This is somewhat frustrating to me. And I know I use a lot of devices that I could totally use a laptop for. And some of that is really just fun, and I get it. But my story number 20 is getting started with Raspberry Pi for hacking using Spiderfoot for OSINT data gathering. Spiderfoot is a Python project. I don't know if you folks have used it. It's pretty awesome. So I saw this article. I'm like, I think I've heard of this before. I may even test a long time ago. It's come a long way. Holy crap!
We have talked
really
about
good.
Spiderfoot ages ago, and
yeah.
Oh,
I ran it last week, and I was like, this thing's pretty friggin' awesome. Like, but I ran it in a Python virtual environment on my desktop. It's like, you don't need a Raspberry Pi.
But a Raspberry Pi becomes the Python virtual environment.
It could be. That's a good point.
I mean, I got to do something with all these Raspberry Pis.
Mm-hmm. Where's your Raspberry Pis, Larry? Show us what you got.
Here's one drawer.
They're in a drawer.
Here's one drawer. One drawer.
Nice. Nice.
Here's one drawer. Yep. There's another drawer over here too. Don't get me wrong. Oh yeah. Oh,
they were Raspberry Pis.
Only one.
They were
Here's another drawer.
They were in short
God.
supply. They were in
That's
short
better.
supply for some time. Apparently, Larry has part of that reason why he's got a stockpile of them. But
Well, when they release a new one, they go absolutely on back order right away. But
yeah,
then there's Larry. I mean, he's got mad skills when it comes to those.
well, and then the price gouging them, supply and demand problem.
Oh, totally.
But
Totally.
don't worry about running on a Pi. A Python virtual environment on your laptop or desktop is totally fine. I did run into a dependency issue. I had to upgrade one of the libraries to get Spiderfoot running. I didn't notice any resulting issues or errors. Also, my other tip for running Spiderfoot is take the time and go get all the API keys and link it to all the free APIs at least, because you'll get much better results. So I got to take that as an action item. I got to set it up on this desktop and do it again because I thought it was a very useful tool for OSINT data gathering.
I mean, the Raspberry Pi makes a nice little appliance to go out and do something forever. They do have one horrible shortfall. They don't work when you turn the power off. I mean, what the hell?
All right.
So as you may or may not know, I have a little flight radar in my garage, and I was messing around with my spark plug, and somehow I turned off a bunch of them, and I get this outage notice that I turned it off. I'm like, I didn't turn it off. I looked at it. Yeah, I had turned it off. Damn thing wouldn't work without the power. Gosh darn it.
Well, I
How
mean,
pedestrian.
The thing that makes the Raspberry Pi great is the standard GPIO pins.
Yep.
And if you're not using those, then you got to call into question, do I need a Raspberry Pi for that?
Yeah. Well, it's real. Well, or it's also a very nice, go to the freezer, get a box, little computer to do something.
Sure.
And they seem pretty bulletproof. I mean, they just seem to work.
It is a nice platform. But again, like I think when you look at the alternatives, the small computers, the alternatives work great. However, they don't have that standard GPIO, which means
correct.
Anyone that's done a project on Raspberry Pi that uses the GPIOs, you can go get the hardware very cheaply, mind you, and implement that same exact project, right? And that's what I think is the number one thing that enabled the whole ecosystem in Raspberry Pi. Because you can get a small computer. In fact, I've heard podcasts talking about this, right? You get a small computer and it's like, well, now I want to do a project that uses the Raspberry Pi GPIOs, but I don't have those. Can I get something that's not really, it's very kludgy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, and this is one of those ones where we've talked about the CrowView Note on the show before, which is basically a screen keyboard and touchpad that you can plug a Raspberry Pi into the side with a little sled and that type of stuff. So you basically are enabling keyboard, mouse, and so forth for Raspberry Pi, and you can swap them out. They have there's a company out there that is doing basically similar. The Raspberry Pi is built in. And the GPIO is on an expansion port on the side of the laptop. So, now you can have a laptop with GPIO expansion.
Neat.
So there's also things like the Nano cluster and things like that. But I mean, there's lots of different form factors. But these are getting amazing. I mean, hell, the JohnCon badges came with a Raspberry Pi Nano 2W, was it? I think that you were supposed to solder onto the holder onto the badge. And solder it on and place it in. It was amazing.
That sounds cool. I'm flashing back to back a long time ago when the way you talk from a computer to stuff was through the HP Instrument Bus interface. And that was a standardized system, but that was, and then that had all kinds of breakout boards and things that you could talk to control things with. And then before that, I remember doing stuff with VME boards with then expansions, and you could even get you could put a VME board with an adapter into your Sun computer, but that's a long time ago. It's so much easier now. I guess on the PC side they're doing things with USB now, but still,
well, Thunderbolt,
nothing like the
USB,
Raspberry Pi interface.
Yeah, the GPIO pins are absolutely magic, and Paul, you were talking about the
Flipper. Are you going to go to the Flipper?
One.
I wanted to go there next.
Go for it.
I didn't add that to my stories for some reason, but there was an article from Geeky Gadgets that talked about the Flipper One. Now, they're not available for purchase or even pre-order, as far as I can tell, yet. However, the Flipper One will be the successor to the Flipper Zero. It is an ARM-based processor that is running its own Linux operating system. So very much a departure from the microcontroller-based processors in the original Flipper. It will have Wi-Fi and Ethernet connectivity. I'm assuming 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi built on, but it will have an M.2 slot for hardware expansion and a 24-pin GPIO header for advanced prototyping and hardware interaction, similar to the original Flipper. Is it? But it's not 24 pins on the original Flipper, is it? It's not that many pins.
No, I don't think so.
I wish I had brought my new gadget down for my other Flipper, but in any case, still in early development. It says Wi-Fi and Ethernet, but I can't tell what the inclusion of built-in Wi-Fi and Ethernet LAN port. That's interesting. I'm not sure what the Wi-Fi chip is on it, if they've disclosed that. So it says the M.2 slot with USB 3.0 and PCIe 2.1 support allows users to integrate additional hardware components, such as software-defined radios or LTE modems for specialized applications. Now, when Josh and I were looking into this, we were like, wait, you can get an SDR and an M.2? That's neat. And we started researching it, and I was like, "What's out there?" And then we found one company. We found one company that makes them. That has, what was it, a 40 megahertz to 6 gigahertz,
45 megahertz to 6 gigahertz, and I went, "That's the same as a Signal Hound, for Christ's sake."
I was like, "Wow!"
Or arguably a HackRF, or potentially,
yeah. But guess how much this M.2 card is estimated by AI?
Let me guess, $3,000.
Is $5,000.
Nope.
Is what it estimated. Yeah. Well, that's what the LLM estimated, but I think having Larry weigh in as an expert in this area, that it's thousands of dollars for that SDR in an M.2.
And that was like, I mean, that's great, but maybe this will spur some of the software-defined radio folks to give us an M.2.
Right.
But I think you're going to be really hard-pressed about the only one you'd get that would be even reasonable for a form factor would be an RTL SDR or RTL SDR capability equivalent, given that this is the size of the device.
Yeah.
And our other one, HackerF and those types of things
It's
are
like 4 times
easily,
that big.
easily 4 times that size. So, but still, I'd kill for RTL SDR on board something like that.
Well,
Yeah,
doesn't New Elec make something similar? But they're USB, or what
Or
are they?
USB.
You
Because
do
the
it
ones
like a
I've always
USB.
looked at are USB. Yeah.
Yep, and
but
the new Elec ones are even smaller. They
So you
do
could
make those super
technically
small.
plug a Flipper 1 and a New Elec in, and then use a GPIO board for the the sub gigahertz and things like that. The antennas that it's missing that the Flipper Zero has. So you could do SDR into the USB port on the Flipper 1 potentially. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think M2 would be much slicker.
I agree, but unless you can afford one of those suckers or find
Well,
one that's
that's
cheaper.
that's why they need to develop it.
Yeah, that's why I think Larry's challenging to come out with one with a much better price tag based on something that's already really cheap. But what
I'd be
about
curious to
antenna
see if-
isolation kind of issues? I mean, with that RTL SDR, don't you have to make sure it's not too close to stuff?
You should. You should.
But you could shield it.
Yep.
Hey, look. You're talking, let's be clear, Lee. First off, for somebody who worked at Idaho National Labs and probably got way too close to radiation sources for your own good, you're also talking to people who used alpha cards with the included 3-foot cable when it should have been a 20-foot cable. Okay? Because those things
Fair.
fry your nads.
So actually, what I was thinking about when it came to isolation is not frying yourself or something else. Is that when you get the interference, you're trying to do something, you get noise in the experiment, and it reduces your success rate, which is frustrating. And I'm thinking about Larry in a classroom setting where he has to reduce the frustration rate for.
I know, but I couldn't resist.
But your point is completely. Your point is fair, and I'm good with it. I mean, trust me. There was this guy who looked a lot like me when he was out at the Nevada test site at the Sudan crater where they were testing nukes for making the Panama Canal bigger. One side of that crater has low rads, the other side has high rads, and I thought, what would happen if I dangled my radiation detector down in there and then turned it in? That would have gone badly.
You would be in the hospital.
No, I wouldn't be, but it would pick up a lot of rads, and they would think I did.
You would be in the hospital until they could determine that you had not taken that amount of rads.
It's like my buddy who was with me talked me out of it, but we had a good laugh for a while. Trust me.
Your dosimeter would have been done black.
Yeah, but it depends on how far down I got it. I mean, It's a pretty big crater. You really can't tell from the photo, but it's actually fairly large. That's Shelly in front of it a number of years ago.
Oh wow,
it's huge. And
so, did you see the Chernobyl movie that they did in English? And some of the it's not 3 Roentgen. What is it? 15,000 and what?
That Chernobyl miniseries. We're getting way off topic here, but that Chernobyl miniseries was amazing.
Yeah,
wasn't it though?
I see clips from that too.
It was amazing. Let's put it this way: it was amazing. It was incredibly well produced. The story told was very well done. But also, when I say amazing, the story was horrifying.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. And that is not the amazing part. That it is in fact horrifying.
No, but what was fascinating to me was they really captured bureaucratic incompetence in action.
Yes.
And bureaucratic inability to believe reality.
Yes.
They also took some liberties on the science. Every time I see a clip posted, people that know the science always kind of comment like that's not wrong, but it's not the full picture of the science behind it.
They took some poetic license, agreed, but they did get the story across.
Yeah. But it's like when we see hacking in the movies too, we're like, a lot of times, we're like, well, that's just not, it's completely wrong. But there's also times when we're like, yeah, that's right, but it's not the full story.
Would you like to write a Visual Basic GUI to track the IP address?
Yeah,
exactly. Like they started at the start. They set up the example, and they got to the end. The middle parts maybe weren't accurate because the middle parts would have taken 7 hours to explain. When they had exactly 30 seconds to move the story along to talk about the rest of the other impact. When arguably it wasn't about the science, it was about the other impact.
Speaking
sorry,
of
I
technical details,
wanted to go. Yeah, I wanted to go back to the Flipper story for a moment because we didn't finish covering that because
good.
Josh and I, we made that discovery, right? So the Flipper Zero includes radios for sub-gigahertz frequencies, NFC, RFID, and infrared communication. Infrared isn't a radio, but tack that
an
on,
antenna,
right?
an antenna for it. Yeah, of some sort. Yeah.
So in contrast, the Flipper one's built for power users, has the M.2 and GPIO. It does not, from what I've read, include, for example, a CC1101 to give you those sub-gigahertz frequencies. That's something you have to add on after if you want those capabilities, which is interesting. Because like you can add on a CC1101, NFC RFID, and infrared to a cheap yellow display. I think I sent that link internally to our group. It requires a lot of wiring and soldering to get that working.
I think their concept was they wanted to turn out a device which would remain in the vaguely affordable range. I don't know what it goes for, but that had the capacity to. They saw all the add-on boards that people built for the Zero, the Flipper Zero, and like, all right, you know what? Somebody will build an add-on board that'll do the sub-gigahertz, the NFC, whatever. And let's just build the chassis instead of building all the capabilities into the chassis. And I get it. That makes sense.
I ordered something kind of along these lines, and it came in yesterday, and I don't have it, so I'm going to show you my screen. But it's called the ESP32 Marauder Double Barrel. Now,
what the hell is that?
Look, I don't normally order a lot of these add-ons like this for the Flipper anymore because I think a lot of them are overpriced, and you can DIY it and get better success and not pay all this money. However, this particular device has two ESP32s, GPS, sub-gigahertz, a battery, a 3D printed case, a GPS, and has the external antennas. It can be run as one ESP32 interfaces with the screen and can be run in standalone mode. It has a battery, and the other ESP32 is the interface into the Flipper. So you can put it on your Flipper, you can not put it on the Flipper, and they just did a really nice job of designing this. And I believe the reason I bought it is it does have Wi-Fi radios that support dual band Wi-Fi.
2x3
3 dBs. I thought this, and I got to continue testing it, but I thought this enabled at least 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi on it. Maybe not.
Oh, no. Look to the right. Down a little bit. There it is. ESP32 Marauder Double Barrel 5G. Is that the one you bought?
Oh, maybe.
Up one.
One?
There, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That one specifically says 5G. So I'm wondering if that doesn't, if the one you had on screen.
Yeah. I got to check my order now.
And the question is 5G. Does that mean 5G cellular or 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi? It says this enables 5 gigahertz right there. So
yeah, 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz scanning. I think this is the one I bought because I remember specifically, like, I'm only buying it if it gives me more functionality than what I have today.
Scanning and deauth for 5G and 2.4. Okay, not bad.
These ship from Australia. It's kind of interesting. The first one was like denied entry into customs, and so they tried again, and it got here. And they sent me an email explaining everything that happened. They're like, "Hey, we're going to try again. You don't have to do anything," and it did get here, which is pretty cool. So the team behind this is doing a good job. The 3D printing is great. The design is great. I can't wait to test it more. So now I'm hoping I bought I believe that's the one I bought.
I'm hoping you bought this $165 one, because that gives you the 5G.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat.
Looks like they're really popular. I mean,
they sold out fast. You got to imagine though, their batches are probably 100 at a shot, not 10,000. You know what I mean?
Hey, selling out 100 that's nothing to shake a stick at. That's
I did.
Pretty cool.
I bought the 5G version.
Oh, good.
Yay.
I was like, I need extra. I'm only buying it if I get that extra functionality. So you may be wondering, like, why are there two ESP32s in there? Why are there two versions of Marauder running? So you can be doing the handshake collection with one and then launch attacks with the other one. So you can do I thought that was worth the money. Like I said, I don't ordinarily buy add-ons for the Flipper, but I thought this one was pretty cool.
Nice.
And did you look? It says something about the 5G has some limitations. Check notes in the GitHub. Did you delve into that yet? Or
they mentioned something, but I was reading the GitHub last night to start to consume all the documentation. Because at first, like, I was like, how do we turn this on? Oh, there's a little switch on the side. I see it now. And I was just kind of messing with it. Yeah, but there are some caveats in there. It's pretty cool.
That is cool. You know, speaking of devices, I'd love your story number 7.
My story number 7. Oh yeah, this was a lot of glitching stuff they were doing here.
I thought Larry'd get a kick out of this.
Yeah, medical device security analysis. So they found a PMD. What is that? A
popular medical device.
Interesting. Extract their own popular medical device. They were using Nordic's NRF 52832 chip as the main MCU. Communicates with Bluetooth. They have the schematic, the memory map, and then they were doing fault injection to unlock the SWD interface. And it consists of invoking a full flash erasure in order to reset the register. Yeah, it was some pretty serious hardware hacking in here. When we talk about glitching and glitching the firmware attacks, it gets really, really technical really fast.
I mean, let me, like, Larry, you've done this a lot, right?
Not as much as I'd like. The glitching one the glitching one is still fairly hard. And a little bit more obtuse, but it is becoming more and more prevalent as we have other protections that we need to get around. So yeah.
So is there like how hard is this glitching to do? How hard is it to work with? Like, they're waiting delay microseconds, shorting this for a few microseconds. Like, this is some really crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you have to automate because you.
Right.
You have to do some automation. And speaking of which, go take a look at Joe Grand's talk that he did at SecKC a couple months ago.
Yes, he is the best at glitching and explaining glitching.
Exactly. He did a fantastic job of explaining it. He did some live glitching on stage. It was obviously stuff that he had practiced many times beforehand.
Well, of course.
But it really, he did it in a 1-hour talk. The challenging one is having access to the appropriate tools. Some of the tools get really expensive. And
there's different types of we're using glitching, but fault injection.
Yep.
And there's different ways to introduce hardware level fault injection.
Yep.
Right?
Whether
that
that be
voltage and there's different ways to do it. Yeah.
So whether it be voltage, EM, electromagnetic interference, you can use freaking lasers to do it as well.
Right.
But
laser fault injection is the thing. I think that's how they broke the security model on the ESP32 platform. There's research that was published, and I want to say that was laser fault injection. Maybe I'm wrong. We covered laser fault injection in an article this year on the show. I don't remember the hardware platform. I thought it was the ESP32, and those are the people that broke the thing around it.
If you're doing the laser fault injection with the lasers, the optical, you're not doing this at home. The amount of equipment that's required for making that happen is extensive.
So let me ask the key question. This is really cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. Reading this is so much fun. Okay. It's like, wow, they built a custom ESP32 firmware. They had they were defeating protection mechanisms and recreating certificates. Like, it's cool. How useful is this in the real world to the bad guys?
I'd tend to argue that this is still approaching on sort of nation state type of level.
Okay.
Especially in the case of this particular device. It's a medical device. If you want to, you just can't walk up to this medical device. You can't connect to some network and hack this thing and, potentially kill people. No, you're putting hands onto a device, you're doing this research, you're getting this custom firmware on it, and then you're having to re-inject this into the supply chain, as it were. You need to go drop one of these off at the hospital and make sure that this one gets into that person's room that you want to cause issues to.
Mm-hmm.
Reasonable? Yes. All well within a well-informed and a well-equipped threat actor. Absolutely possible. But the point being here is that, Josh, I think where you're getting with this is that these techniques are absolutely reasonable with someone with a medium to high level amount of skill. Does not need to be nation state to pull off. But the final leg of where this comes into is that you're definitely targeted attacks. There are definitely other things you need to consider about having this type of thing have some real impact to a potential patient. In the case
so
of
this is a targeted attack using a mod to high skilled attacker from very, very talented individual up to nation state.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It seems like it'd be a great topic for a book.
Yeah, but a lot of times
good read.
they you use fault injection attacks to bypass security controls on hardware. They give you access to, as an example, a bypass of secure boot or a bypass of firmware encryption. Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But that's kind of like the end goal, so that you can then analyze the device and maybe find other vulnerabilities that allow you to compromise the device without having to bring your laser fault injection. Because I've seen setups, it's like 3D printed things and it's this massive thing. It's more like a means to an end, Josh, rather like I'm not going to bring my laser fault injection to, someone's medical device out in the field. I'm going to use that in my research to find other vulnerabilities that I can
other vulnerabilities to do some reverse engineering of binaries and so forth, to find other overflow opportunities, like with the Wi-Fi chipset, or by getting access to the drivers that they're using on the actual device.
Travis Goodspeed's book, I think, talks about this too. I got to get back to reading that. Yeah, he talks about that.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's meth.
Absolutely fair.
When meth was originally conceived, it was done by chemists with laboratory glassware, and they simplified and simplified and simplified.
Yeah.
And once they broke the seal, if you will, until they got it down to using pots and pans and trailers and crap.
We do see a similar trend, Josh, in fault injection attacks, right? It being simpler and more cost effective to do those over time, for sure.
No, this is interesting. Okay, so it's a moderate to high skilled attack with typically a targeted attack, or you're looking for something you can use as an untargeted attack down the road. More targets at least. Okay. I got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
I want to talk about a couple of scams before we wrap too. My stories number 17 and 18, we're going like now the opposite way of technical, right? The first one is from the New York Times. I've written about lots of different scams, but this one almost got me. And I want to say, now I can't read the article because I don't have an account, and I got to put it through some other kind of site to read it. But I want to say this one used Zelle, and anytime Zelle is in play, it's almost always a scam, which is interesting. Let's see if I can find the right site to get access to this article, because it was like reverse psychology. He was on the phone for a really long time with this person, and said, they attackers call and say, hey, someone is trying to transfer funds out of your account, and in order to stop that, you need to go to Zelle and enter this special code, and that will reverse it. But really what they were walking them through is using Zelle to transfer money out of their account.
Nice.
But they were very convincing. When he asked to speak to a manager, they actually transferred him to a different person.
Wow.
And then the attackers were like, hey, well, here at Chase, we'll never ask you for your personal information. But he's like, you just need to go in this thing and enter the amount of $2,100, and it'll reverse the charges. And he's like, it doesn't feel like that's going to reverse the charges. It feels like that's going to transfer $2,100. But the reason they're doing this attack is because it worked, right? I think the reason they're putting all this effort behind it is because for some people are like, oh, well, I don't want to lose $2,100, so go to Zelle, enter this special code, and that special code means it's going to return the money when in fact, obviously, it doesn't.
Sending it, right?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. Fortunately, the author of the article didn't fall for the attack, but interesting, kind of public service announcement. Tell your friends and family if Zelle equals scam.
Be real careful. Although Zelle's got a lot of hot water for not being more.
Yeah, they don't enforce it. Yeah, I can see that.
But the killers. You know who owns Zelle?
No,
the banks.
It's B of A, J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Capital One, PNC, Truist, and U.S. Bank. So we're talking trillion-dollar institutions who can just absorb any losses with Zelle and make people right. But let's say you're my local bank customer or my local credit union. You're not sitting in one of those institutions, and so you don't have the protection. So I would say if you're going to use Zelle at all, make sure you understand what your risks are. And actually, a lot of the smaller institutions put a lot of caps on Zelle use that you won't find at the big guys because they can't just absorb the loss. Yeah. Zelle is neat, but look at other options because there are a lot of them out there.
Valid merchants are going to take credit cards, right?
Yeah.
And that's the number one thing. PayPal has gotten better.
Yeah, and that's Venmo too. PayPal and Venmo are
right. Yeah. Even Venmo is better than Zelle.
Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole bunch of the stuff that
the credit card is the best because you can always dispute charges on your credit card, obviously, right? And so if you're buying something and the person's not accepting a credit card, I mean that's first red flag number one. And then if they start going to all these weird payment shit, if you're like, well, if I can't Venmo you, they're like, no, you got to use Zelle or Cash App or something other like these weird ones.
Well, actually, Cash App is okay, but
Cash App is better.
But do your
Weirdly
homework.
enough,
Don't
Cash
just
App
go
is
grab
better.
Cash App because I said it's okay because that would research it.
This one next one, my story number 18, right, is you never need to work again. Criminals offer a reporter money to hack the BBC. This has always been one of my fears, and you can hear me say this on
This
previous
has been going on
shows.
for years.
Yeah, this is my concern of insider threat, but the insider is a person who, like Russian mafia, has dropped off a bag of money at the doorstep and coerced that person to become an insider.
There was an offer, 5 years ago.
Tesla had an incident like this. Several companies have.
Many companies have had an incident like this. The standing offer for a while was $1 million in crypto. That is clean crypto. For all you have to do is log in.
Give them access to your PC. Right. That's what they were asking. Like, hey, give them remote access to your PC. In exchange, we'll give you $1 million. We'll cover our tracks. No one will ever know. You're going to walk away clean and free with $1 million.
Yeah.
And that was essentially the offer in the story number 18. Well, they offered a reporter at the BBC. I don't know what they offered him, $1 million. A percentage of the ransom. Yes. Yep. Yes.
And they said they would give, I think it was 20 or 25% of the ransom, which would be 1% of the BBC's revenue.
Right.
So they said, look, we're going to get tens of millions. You can get a few £1,000,000. You won't have to work again ever.
Right.
I mean, in one sense, it's one way to fire financial independence, retire early, but it may not be the most ethical way to do it.
Right. In detecting this could be super hard, right? If someone goes, well, maybe I'll take this.
I clicked the link in an email.
Yeah. In monitoring and discovering and doing the investigation to figure out that person was paid off could be, I mean, that's not impossible. It's not in the wheelhouse of most IT teams, right? You need help with that.
Mandiant plus FBI, old FBI, maybe.
Right.
Nowadays, good luck.
Yeah, good luck getting some help with that, right?
They don't care.
It's crazy.
Plus, remember, it's illegal to pay a ransom.
Yeah, Josh, I'd argue that they probably don't care. They have bigger fish to fry. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, anyway, perhaps competence levels have changed. But anyway, the issue here is that, there's nobody going to catch this. So if somebody is disgruntled, unhappy, close to retirement, says, screw it, I'm going to give it a shot. And if the ransomware gang actually carries out their promise of covering their tracks, not blaming you, not throwing you to the wolves for their own amusement, then yeah, you've got this employee of a bank, employee of SpaceX, employee of whatever that goes, yeah, I'd like 3 million, please, and gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And crypto's outside the financial banking system. Unless you know that person owns the wallet, you're never going to know that it was them that took that money out. You'll notice the cryptocurrency being split and one going into a specific wallet. If that cryptocurrency is tracked for long enough, you may be able to figure out whose it is.
Right.
If they're careful.
There was a company that was like pioneering in that, right?
Chainalysis.
Yeah, Chainalysis.
Chainalysis, yep.
But it's going to be not fun. And, if this person is smart, they just keep working. I clicked the link, I'm sorry. And if they can keep their job and they keep working and 5 years later they retire, do you really think that something past the statute of limitations, Chainalysis is going to give a crap?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not tell people how to commit crime.
Which is why Lee absolutely has all those wallets that now he admits publicly are his.
Publicly is a bit of a stretch, but yeah, okay. Hey.
Back to hardware hacking for just a moment. I did want to talk about my story number 27.
Mm-hmm.
This is analysis of the Moxa NPort series. It looks like an industrial IoT device. It's like Ethernet to serial kind of communications.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting, because I like reviewing all the hardware kind of hacking research and just, cataloging these, saving them, and looking at like interesting things that might help us on our next hardware hacking journey. This one had a UART, port on it, which that's not the most interesting thing. It had another 2 pins that you can clearly see in I think it's the first, no, not the first picture, but a little ways down.
Which story this is yours, Paul?
27.
27, okay.
It had these other 2 pins that when jumpered together got you into the bootloader menu, which is red boot in this particular case. So jumper those 2 pins, go into the device, and now you're in a hidden menu. And in this menu, option 98 is to go back to red boot, and it dumps you in a bootloader command prompt, which I thought was interesting. Not much was done after this, but I thought interesting to look for in future hardware hacking endeavors, pins that you might be able to jumper that change the functionality to allow you access to the bootloader. So that was pretty cool. Again, nothing new, just kind of techniques that are out there being written up that I like to catalog, that might come in handy in the future. Larry, I don't know why my story number 28 was old. I don't know how that came up in my feed, but it was a TP-Link exploit. And I was like, oh, this looks really cool. Like, I like exploits for IoT devices. But this was from like 2022. Not sure how it came up.
But it did.
Well, remember, was it last week or earlier this week? It was last week. There was a whole bunch of stuff out of the keb that was like really old.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's what
I was wondering, was this story itself old, or was this just something that's been resurfaced? It looks like it's an old story.
I mean, I researched the CVE in here, and I didn't see evidence of like recent activity.
I wouldn't expect, but
it's not listed in the. Oh, wait a minute.
Is it?
No, I don't believe it is in the. I don't believe it's in the.
Okay, then.
Okay,
yeah,
that's what I thought too. But
yeah, I mean, far be it from attackers to go out and look for old vulnerabilities that aren't patched. I mean,
yeah, it is not currently in the kev that I'm aware of.
I mean, that was one of my comments somewhere last week is about, don't make the attacker's job any easier. That's what it was. I was actually looking at there was a story this week about the kid that hacked Power School, that apparently had been doing all kinds of crazy hacking and was actually planning to take his skills to a job at Google. And in the middle of that, I found a reference that apparently Power School got in trouble with the state of Texas because they said they had state-of-the-art security.
Ooh.
But they hadn't implemented MFA, and they also admitted if they had MFA, the kid's hack wouldn't have worked. I'm like, don't make it easier. Hello? So how can you claim state-of-the-art security without MFA and all these other things we call table stakes? Oh, I know,
Yep.
because people don't check, right, Josh?
No comment.
That pained grin said a mouthful.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, don't make the job easier for the hackers. Fix your stuff. Make sure it's secure.
Use MFA. Yep.
Yes.
Use MFA.
Use
Please, dear
EDR.
God.
Get your logging monitoring. I think that's
On that note,
all we got to say.
That brings us to time.
Yeah.
Good job keeping on time. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. Larry, take us out.
Over and get hacking.